So far away, Lucas, and lovely audience at home, welcome once again to a lovely Christmas episode of Wiki Weekends, a series where I, your host for this episode, Karl Smallwood, will scour the lengths and breadths of the internet and bring forth a wiki on a subject that has been decided on by our audience today over on Patreon, and myself and my lovely co-host, Lucas Holland.
Hello there!
We'll go through it and see what kind of conversation arises as a result. And Lucas, you've got to, hold your hands upon this one. Like, you made big mistakes, because when I put out the Patreon vote for this month, my wording in Discord that I wanted you to put on Patreon was alternative Christmas movies.
I didn't necessarily make a mistake, because in my notepad, I've written down in quotes, which I don't normally do, but I must have asked you when we were talking, not necessarily in the Discord, but when we were just having the discussion about the vote, you must have at some point mentioned the wording less appreciated Christmas film,
which is not what's written on we might be living in parallel realities here, Lucas, because on Discord, which I'll put the screenshot in when I messaged you of here's my Patreon pick for this month, I put alternative Christmas movies, but whatever. So
I just checked what notes I had down from the meeting
instead of checking the conversation. You know what, Lucas, we're going to argue about it some more after we finish recording, but the movie that our audience picked was Gremlins. So far away, Lucas, what do you know about some Gremlins, which is, in keeping with the pitch I gave to the audience, an alternative Christmas movie, where it's a movie, ostensibly, set at Christmas, that is very Christmassy, but it doesn't necessarily conform to the usual Christmas tropes. For example, a bunch of people die. And one person in particular gets it super rough.
Everyone in our comments seemed to think that Die Hard was, if not a Christmas movie, at least could be argued as a Christmas movie. And plenty of people die in that.
Yeah, that's why I say alternative Christmas movie. It's not necessarily a traditional Christmas movie. It's a movie that people will watch at Christmas time as a Christmas movie, even though, as mentioned, it doesn't conform to the usual Christmas movie tropes or trappings.
The thing that I was just double checking about the Gremlins was the most famous thing about the Gremlins, right?
Yes.
Which is?
Well, I'm going to say it's Gizmo, but...
No, the most famous part of Gremlins is the rules about the Gremlins.
Oh yeah, that people endlessly argue over, of don't feed them after midnight, don't get them wet, that sort of thing.
And avoid bright light, and I was going to make the joke that they follow the same rules as me, and then I remembered that one of them is don't get them wet, and it's like, oh, Lucas doesn't shower.
Yeah, don't make that joke, Lucas. You are a guy on the internet, people might not. Lucas does shower. He got out of the shower 5 minutes ago, that's why I'm recording right now instead of him, because he's still got wet hair. He's in the middle of just toweling himself off. On camera that I can see, so thank you, Lucas, for that.
Hang on, no, I don't like this.
Hey, if you can tell lies about me... I thought you were going to say it's Gizmo, right? Because Gizmo is fucking adorable. And one of the funniest things about the Gremlins series, which is just 2 movies, there is rumours of a third one getting made, but every time they talk about it, the director Joe Dante's like, well, I guess I might make a third Gremlins movie, but...
This species is wildly dangerous. Never get them wet.
Wild, because I'd assumed that it's one of those franchises where it's like, well, I'm aware of the first 2 and I've seen the first 2, and then the franchise just peels off into a vast universe of shit spin-offs.
Well, they've tried, and the director Joe Dante just refused to make any more. And as mentioned, there has been ideas for either a reboot, a sequel, a soft reboot, a requel. Have you heard about this, Lucas, now? Hollywood's done so many shit sequels and reboots, they're coming up with new words to describe sequels because they're embarrassed about how many times they've tried this. I think Halloween, the new trilogy, was called a requel, which is a word they made up because they were embarrassed about trying again. But in regards to Gremlins, they've been trying that for years, and every time they do, just the fan response is it going to be puppets? And Hollywood's like, well, how about shit CGI? It's like, no, we want puppets. It's like, no, shit CGI. It's like, puppets! We want the puppets! And the puppets in the first movie were terrible, but there's a charm to them, because that's a real little rubber gremlin going fucking apeshit, drinking a beer or throwing peanuts or sending an old lady up on a stair lift out of a window at 1,000 miles an hour.
they obviously went completely off the rails with the second one, right?
Yeah. And that was part of the reason why they were able to make the second one, where Joe Dante didn't want to make a sequel. And then the puppeteer, the guy who did all the puppets, and so it's like, well, fuck this. It was an absolute ball ache. He went, no, if you come do a sequel, because the first one made a bunch of money, you can do whatever you want. You can get real weird with it, and that's why in the second one, it's really self-referential. Like, they have a guy joking about the 3 rules of the Mogwai. It's like, what do you mean you can't eat after midnight? It's always after midnight somewhere, right? And then a gremlin flies out of his computer and gets him.
What if they're eating in an airplane and they cross a time zone? I mean, it's always midnight somewhere.
But you know what? Let's get everyone on the same page. Specifically, this Wikipedia page. Gremlins is a 1984 comedy horror film directed by Joe Dante, written by Chris Columbus and starring Zach Galligan, Phoebe Cates, Hoyt Axton, Polly Holliday, and Francis Lee McCain, with Howie Mandel providing the voice of Gizmo. And Lucas, do you know who Howie Mandel is? Because you probably recognise him if I showed you a picture of his face.
I recognise the name.
You recognise the name, yeah.
Place it.
Yeah, he was a comedian at the time, but nowadays he's best known as he's that dude off America's Got Talent.
Oh,
that's
yes.
Gizmo.
I'm the voice of Gizmo
From Gremlins.
Listen, I did. I don't think people know that, but it's me.
That's Gizmo.
That's Gizmo, yes it is. And the voice of all the Gremlins were provided by various celebrities, which we'll get to, but they're not mentioned in the opening paragraph. And Lucas, do you know where the term Gremlins comes from? Which is actually really interesting.
No, I'm not got a clue.
So Gremlins, it mentions it here in the first paragraph of Wikipedia. The film draws on legends of folkloric, mischievous creatures that cause malfunctions. Gremlins in the British Royal Air Force going back to World War II. So, like, when there was just an unexplained problem with the mechanics of an aircraft in World War II, they would just chalk it up to gremlins in the machinery. And that goes back even further to the ideas of like elves and gremlins in folklore, which can harm or hinder depending on how they feel that day.
Yeah, and like I've heard the term kind of thrown around when it comes to like tech problems, right? It's
yeah,
like,
just
the gremlins.
It's like just an unexplainable problem that you don't really know the cause of, so you blame it on a gremlin.
Right, it's just, yeah. There's something wrong with it, and we'll figure it out, but the gremlins caused it, yeah.
And, like, you know, the gremlins in Gremlins are, like, you know, a literal personification of that ideal of these tiny little mischievous creatures that just want to cause havoc. They just want to go ape shit. And you know what? They go big ape shit throughout that movie, and it's hilarious.
See, I think that what the modern equivalent would be if you did like a Gremlins 3 nowadays, it's whenever there's someone trying to stream on Twitch, the Gremlins attack and just come in and cause audio and tech problems.
Well, there's been like a couple of like pitches for a third one. I believe Red Letter Media did a pitch for a third one that was actually acknowledged by the director of Gremlins, Joe Dante, on Facebook or something, where they say, no, go bigger, put Gremlins in the White House and have them taking over Twitter. And to quote, I think it's Mike Stacklaser who says this, like, they should become the quintessential internet trolls. Like, literal internet trolls.
Gremlins have taken over people's Twitter accounts. And then I pictured just gremlins just walking down the street looking at their phones.
The film was accompanied by a large merchandising campaign and juxtaposes black comedy with a Christmas time setting. Steven Spielberg was the film's executive producer.
Yeah, and I often hear it referred to as Steven Spielberg's Gremlins, which seems a little bit...
It's disingenuous.
You know, yeah, undue when it's just he was an executive producer. He basically just, like, slapped his name on there for a bit of credibility.
Like, we don't call it Steven Spielberg's Transformers, do we? Because he was an executive producer on that. We call it Michael Bay's Transformers.
But we do call it Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas.
I was about to say, like, and do you know who directed Nightmare Before Christmas, Lucas? Because it wasn't Tim Burton.
We talked about this recently.
We did, yes.
Was it Henry Selick or something?
Yes, it was.
Like that? Yeah.
So people don't know, wait, Tim Burton didn't direct Nightmare Before... No, he didn't. And the annoying thing is, well, he never really corrects people when they say it's his film. Because he wrote the story, but he didn't direct it, and he certainly had nothing to do with the stop motion.
Yeah, he had the original concept and then let everyone else do the hard work.
Yeah, and puts his name on it. Which, you know what? He's that guy in a group project. What a prick. But let's move on. Gremlins was released theatrically on June 8th, 1984 by Warner Bros. To critical and commercial success. However, it was heavily criticised by some for its more violent sequences.
What's fun about a movie full of ugly, slimy, mean-spirited, gloppy little monsters who run amok and attack innocent people?
In response to this and similar complaints about Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Spielberg suggested that the Motion Picture Association of America alter its rating system. So this film is noteworthy because it literally helped create the PG-13 rating. And what's really funny about this is that because the PG-13 rating didn't exist, Gremlins and Temple of Doom were both rated PG, and the only reason they were rated PG is the sheer weight of the reputation of Steven Spielberg. Keep in mind, like, Temple of Doom, like, people straight up fucking die in that movie.
Oh, yeah.
And Gremlins has, like, people dying in a more cartoonish way, admittedly, but the Gremlins are pretty vicious little bastards. And there's a lot of, like, violence, albeit comedic violence, but there's a lot of violence that would not necessarily be suitable for very young children. But it's only because, like, no, Steven Spielberg came in and swung his dick around that they were able to make them PG. And then they went, okay, these can't be PG, but they're clearly not adult movies. There's not stuff in here that's so extreme that, like, a teenager couldn't watch it. We need to come up with a compromise. And the compromise was PG-13.
Yeah, a very similar story, I'd say, with Spider-Man, where just there was a lot of parents kicking off because the movie was going to be rated for 12 and up. There's like, but I want to take my kid to go see a Spider-Man movie. And then presumably also Marvel being like, hey, like, we need this to be rated for kids because, hey, that's who's going to see a Spider-Man movie.
The 12A rating, which is, like, kids over 12 can go see it on their own, so you can send, like, you know, your kids, your teenagers to the cinema on their own. But if it's a child, if they're accompanied by an adult, they're allowed in as well.
Mm-hmm. So very similar to PG-13, I'd presume.
And as with all these rating systems, it's like it's a guideline, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like just be warned that there might be some things in here that are unsuitable for children below this age. And do you know what the wildest fucking movie to get a PG rating is? And it's produced by Disney. So I rewatched this recently because I heard about it. I went, it can't be that bad. And it's a film called Mission to Mars. And are you familiar at all with Mission to Mars? It's basically The Martian before The Martian, where Don Cheadle gets stranded on Mars during a Mars mission.
We're trying not to go too nuts up here, but we think there's a good chance that this could be water. Of course, if that's correct, then we may have found the key to permanent human colonization.
Yes.
And for the most part, not really much happens. But there's one moment in the film where a giant alien tornado kills all of Don Cheadle's astronaut friends. And there's one moment that is so fucking raw, I can't believe it's in a PG movie produced by Disney, where a guy gets spun by the tornado so much that his skull explodes out of the astronaut costume. And you see it in detail. You see his skull stretch out and explode. And I was like, there's no fucking way this was PG. And it's yes, it was. And that's one of the reasons why PG-13 became a thing.
Oh my god, I mean, like, that's the worst part about mentioning clips like that, is that even we can't put it in because we'll likely get
I'll put it in. I don't give a fuck. I'm going to put it in. It's Christmas. Why not? Why not take a risk at Christmas? And Lucas, do you need to know the plot of Gremlins?
The plot of Gremlins is basically, don't do these things, then those things immediately happen and chaos ensues,
and
right?
Gremlin action begins, yes. But the basic plot, for anyone unfamiliar with the film, is it's a struggling inventor gets this creature called a mogwai from, like, what is the most stereotypical Asian salesman you've ever seen. Like, straight out of the fucking Simpsons, which presumably is what the Simpsons are referencing with, like, the Frogut scene.
But it comes with a free Frogut.
That's good.
The Frogut is also cursed.
That's bad.
Where he buys this, like, weird creature called a mogwai for his son, Billy Peltzer, played by Zach Galligan. And it's just, there's 3 rules. Don't feed it after midnight. Don't get it wet. Don't expose it to bright light. And as you mentioned, he does all 3 things almost instantly. Proving that he was not mature enough to have a fucking pet.
Well, it's the movie equivalent, isn't it, of just when someone's like, well, you can have a dog, but you've got to look after it yourself, and then immediately they just don't do anything with the dog. They don't feed it, they
almost
don't walk
instantly, yeah. And it's like just Gizmo, the Mogwai, is real cute, trying its best, but then as soon as it gets wet, it gives birth or gives rise to the Gremlins, which are awesome. The Gremlins are such great designs, because do you know what the best bit about the Gremlins is? They just love it. They just love being evil, and it's great.
Yeah, like, they are just, as I say, absolute chaos, and they just enjoy ruining everyone's day.
And we've already been through the main cast, but there are a few standouts listed in the cast section that we didn't get to, such as one, Jonathan Banks. So Mike
Mr.
from Breaking Bad.
Oh man, like, that's the thing. Jonathan Banks was just that workhorse actor that no one really recognised for the longest time.
Yeah, but still, he got work. Dude got work.
Little monsters.
Right.
Hundreds of them.
Well, I'm not sure. Maybe thousands.
Wow.
Look, I know it sounds crazy.
The film features various cameos from crew members or guests. For example, Steven Spielberg cameos as a man riding a bicycle. Composer Jerry Goldsmith plays a man in a phone booth. Kenneth Tobey plays a smoking gas station attendant. And William Shallett plays Father Bartlett. Animator, well, you should say legendary animator, because he's the guy who did the fucking Looney Tunes. Chuck Jones plays Mr. Jones, Billy's drawing mentor.
Yeah, that is a level, isn't it, where... I guess it would be the equivalent of just calling Steven Spielberg, like, another director.
Oh yeah, we have a cameo from, director. It's like, come on, I know that's what he is, but you feel like when it's Steven fucking Spielberg, the fact I've got to have the modifier Steven fucking Spielberg, right? Mm-hmm. Then we have here the voices of the Gremlins and the Mogwai. So Howie Mandel as Gizmo, Frank Welker, aka Megatron, and Fred from Scooby-Doo, and then countless other roles that you no doubt recognise as Stripe, the leader of the Gremlins, Don Steele as Rockin' Ricky Rialto, Marvin Miller as Robbie the Robot, uncredited, and the vocal effects of the Mogwai were provided by a combination of Mandel, Welker, Brad Keston, uncredited, Michael Winslow, aka the guy who does the voices and the sound effects from the Police Academy movies, Bob Bergen, Fred Newman, Peter Cullen.
One shall stand, one shall fall. Why throw away your life so recklessly?
Sonny Melendrez, Mark Dodson, and Bob Holt. Also, director Joe Dante voiced one of the Gremlins, apparently. It just feels like...
many people.
I bet it's just one of those things of, do you want to be a Gremlin?
Yeah, right.
It feels like one of those, right, of when they were in this... I bet it was so much fun. I bet during, post-production, when they were getting the sound effects for the Gremlins, I bet they were like, okay, who wants to be a Gremlin? And people were queuing out the door, I want to be a Gremlin. I'd love to be a Gremlin.
Yeah, I guess, that's the thing, isn't it? If it's just, get a bunch of voice actors in for, one day and pay them all minimal amount to just have fun and do a bit of Gremlin work.
Just pay them scale to, be in the recording booth and just make some funny noises.
Mm-hmm.
And show them clips in the movie and say, okay, voice what you think the character would sound like, and we'll use what's funniest.
Here's your coffee, sir.
The outtakes must be ridiculous on that, I'd imagine.
Yeah. It's good as well, because if you watch the movie and you know that the Gremlins didn't work, and you know that they were a ball ache to operate, one thing I recommend is going back and watching Gremlins 1 and 2 and keeping an eye on the Gremlins in the background. Because there's some Gremlins that just don't move, and it's really funny when you know to look for them.
Oh dear. I love stuff like that where no one's going to notice the Gremlins in the background. We'll get away with it, and they obviously did.
Yeah.
But if you know to look out for it, it's very funny.
It is, yeah. It's like when you watch Jurassic Park and you notice that one Velociraptor that doesn't move. Because it's not on frame yet. It's it doesn't move until the camera's on it, it's waiting for its cue, and it's it's a CGI Velociraptor, what the fuck? Why is it waiting for its cue? But we have the background here, Luke. So, Gremlins was produced at a time when combining horror and comedy was becoming increasingly popular. According to the appropriately named Professor Noel Karl, Ghostbusters released the same weekend as Gremlins, and the comic strip The Far Side also followed the trend. Karl argued that there was now a new genre emphasising sudden shifts between humorous and horrific scenes, drawing laughs with plot elements that have been traditionally used to scare, and the Gremlins is very good at that.
And that's just an insane thing looking back, that Gremlins and Ghostbusters came out on the same weekend.
I forget what it was, but I think it's like Jurassic Park and The Shawshank Redemption and another massive movie were in theatres on the same weekend. Like, there's some like legendary like runs of films where it's like, how the fuck did this legendary film become a legendary film when it was competing against other massive, huge, big film?
Yeah, it's like looking back at certain video game weeks where they all just used to launch in fall, and it's like, oh, in like 2004 where Half-Life 2 dropped against like 5 other bangers at the same time.
It's wild, right? But it mentions here, as noted in the intro, the notion of gremlins was first conceived in the 1920s, when mechanical failures in RAF aircraft were jokingly blamed on the small monsters. The term gremlins also entered popular vernacular as children's author and former RAF pilot Roald Dahl published a book called The Gremlins in 1943, based on the mischievous creatures.
Oh, right, okay.
And you think, as what it mentions here, there's been numerous bits of media featuring the idea of a gremlin or similar creature on the wing of a plane.
Okay.
There's been a Bugs Bunny cartoon called Falling Hair. There's also been a Twilight Zone episode, which has been referenced by everything from The Simpsons to Family Guy to Futurama, I think, do it best. So it's like, oh my god, there's a monster on the wing! Why would I believe you? You're Hitler!
You're on an airplane.
There's a gremlin destroying the plane! You've got to believe me!
Why should I believe you? You're Hitler!
No! Ava Braun, help me!
It's the fact that Fry's like, I saw that coming, that fucking slays me every single time.
And Karl, I did, just for the sake of, getting a bunch of corrections in the comments, I did check, and it says here on Today I Learned on Reddit that in October of 1994, Pulp Fiction, Forrest Gump, The Shawshank Redemption, and Jurassic Park were all in theatres at the same time.
How did all those movies make it?
Yeah, right.
It's like, today, you can't get a movie in theatres that lasts more than 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
When it's on its own, and it's got no competition.
That would be just a difficult decision to make, isn't it? You walk into the theatre, so like, what movie out of these two? Did you just sit down the entire day and commit?
I've only ever done that once, and that was a good fucking day. It's when I went to go see like a double bill of Die Hard 1 and 2, and they had like an hour intermission in the middle where everyone went and got pissed. I went back in and watched Die Hard 2. It's pretty good. Recommended. And he mentions here that Joe Dante publicly distanced his work from the earlier films and media featuring gremlins and gremlin-adjacent creatures. Because they're not always gremlins, sometimes they're just like little monsters. That's sort of like gremlins. Stating, our gremlins are somewhat different. They're green, they have big mouths, and they smile a lot and do incredibly, really nasty things to people and enjoy it all the while. And that's the thing about the gremlins, that they fucking love just causing mischief, strife, and discord. They love it. They're so fun. They're such like great villains. They're not even villains really, because they're just having fun. Like, how can they be villains if it's just in their nature to just fuck shit up?
Yeah, and I think the right term to use is just chaos, because it's not evil or villainy, it's just them fucking around.
Yeah, and that's the thing, they do fuck around a lot.
Yeah.
We have here development. The story of Gremlins was conceived by writer Chris Columbus. As Columbus explained, his inspiration came from his loft when at night, and to quote again, what sounded like a platoon of mice would come out. To hear them skittering around in the blackness was really creepy. And I bet that would be right, seeing an unexplained like noise in your ceiling, like what you can clearly tell is multiple creatures. You don't know how many, you know what they're up to, but skitting around just above your head, out of sight, plotting, planning.
And speaking of Chris Columbus, are they maybe the person that would, like, maybe without people even knowing, be like the most associated with Christmas in our like childhoods and just movie watching experiences?
I've brought up his thing here for anyone unfamiliar with him. He did Home Alone, and Mrs. Doubtfire, which I don't consider Mrs. Doubtfire to be a Christmas movie, but I know a lot of people watch it around Christmas. It's often on TV around Christmas, right?
And as well, the first, 2 Harry Potter movies, where both of them feature, heavily Christmassy scenes, and people associate those movies with Christmas.
Yeah, Harry Potter's another series that's closely associated with Christmas. He directed the first 2 of those and was a producer on a couple more. He also did Percy Jackson and Pixels. So, he wanted some money at some point. He did He needed the money, Lucas. Fuck it. Again, if you're going to criticize you did Pixels, I also did Home Alone and Gremlins. Fuck, he did do those as well. Well, the story was not actually intended to be filmed until Steven Spielberg took an interest. And when the maestro comes in and goes, make this into a movie, it gets made into a fucking movie. As Spielberg
he saw the merchandising capability of the Gremlins and went, make that right now.
Which they also acknowledge in Gremlins 2. Where the villain of that movie looks at Gizmo and goes, do you know what I see here? I see a stuffed figure on the window of a car.
It still to this day, considering that the franchise has been dead for 30 years or whatever, it's merchandised heavily even now.
It is, but like I said, every time they try and do something with it, there's heavy resistance because they want to do it practically. And Hollywood doesn't like the idea of doing it practically, even though, 1, it's cheaper, 2, it's better for a movie like Gremlins, and 3, is what everybody wants. But they want CGI, Lucas, because with CGI, you can make all the executive changes you want. You can meddle to your heart's content. You can't meddle on the practical effects, because once it's done, it's fucking done.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think saying that it's cheaper might technically not be true, because you got to think about the extra production time and the fact that they can't make any changes, so massive reshoots may be needed if they wanted to change stuff.
Practical effects are, on the whole, cheaper if you know what you're doing and have people who are familiar with the idea of practical effects. You can't, as you mentioned, though, make extensive changes, which is just par for the course with modern Hollywood films. It mentions here that the reason, though, Spielberg bought it is simply because, and I quote, it's one of the most original things I've come across in many years. That's why I bought it. So Steven Spielberg bought the script, and that's why he's a producer.
I mean, that's very fair because, as they say, the film literally wouldn't have been made without him. But yeah, just when Steven Spielberg's interested in a script, you make that film.
When the maestro comes in, shit gets done. And there are numerous sections we could cover on Wikipedia here, Lucas, but I'm going to go straight to special effects because the Gremlins are the star of the movie. They're on the poster, they're on the front of the box, on the DVD, the Blu-ray, the VHS, what have you. They're the part of the film everyone remembers.
They're the name of the film.
They're literally the thing the film is named after, so let's talk about those, shall we? So, some of the performances were shot on the Courthouse Square and Colonial Street sets of Universal Studios Lot and Universal City, which is just a thing, most big studios have just a backlot with some pre-built sets on there that can be customised and tailored to the specific needs of whatever's being shot there. They're very modular. For example, it's just the last making of I watched is Wolverine and Deadpool. If you watch that, the making of where they talk about how there's this big city pre-built in Britain somewhere that we went into and just made it into an American street.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where a lot of places, as you say, have backlots like that, but the Universal one is, I think, the biggest in Hollywood or the world or something. It's massive.
And they make a lot of money renting it out to other studios because hey, we've got a pre-built street. We've got a pre-built street here, you can just come use it. And Lucas, an earlier attempt to use live monkeys to interpret the Gremlins was abandoned because the test monkeys panicked when made to wear a gremlin head. And here's the thing,
yeah, no shit.
I think that'd play well for the movie. I think if they just put a gremlin head on a monkey and the monkey flipped its fucking shit and started throwing crap around on set, just film that.
Pepe, go for the face!
It certainly captures the same energy.
It would, yeah, but I think that would not be safe for the actors or the monkeys. Puppets and marionettes were then used instead so the actors could work alongside them. Which makes sense, you need the actors to be safe. Numerous small rubber puppets, some of which were mechanical, were used to portray Gizmo and the Gremlins. They were designed by Chris Wallace. There was more than one Gizmo puppet, and occasionally Galligan, when carrying one, would set them down off camera when Gizmo appeared to be sitting on a surface. It was actually a different puppet that was wired to and connected to that surface. And there's also a giant Gizmo they made, I think, for the second one, so they could put more detail in. So it's like a larger than life-size gizmo made, so they could get really close in for the camera, so you can see all like the detail of his eyes and his fur and stuff.
I appreciate that making all these puppets and stuff is hard work, but at what point do you sit down pre-production and go, I think we just whack some helmets on a monkey
and just see what happens?
Like, who's making those decisions?
Well, he did say that it was like abandoned very shortly, because when you're figuring stuff out,
it shouldn't have got to the test.
It probably shouldn't know, but that's one of the most interesting parts of movie production to me. It's that experimental phase where it's okay, we've got an idea, it's a pretty big idea. How do we realise it? And then they just have to sit down and go, okay, how do we realise tiny little rubber gremlins running around causing havoc? And someone went, monkeys. And the first day they put that monkey in the helmet and it just ran off and just leapt onto an extra and tried to attack them, they just looked at that guy and he went, it was a bad idea. Let's just make them puppets. He's like Alien 3, which we talked about in the past, where the initial idea for Alien 3 was to put a Whippet in an alien costume. And they said they got all the way to the point of putting the dog in the costume, and literally the first second they filmed it, went, it's not going to work, he looks too cute.
You have to wonder in those situations, is it just a really bad idea from someone very high up? And you have to test it.
We have to test it to show them that it doesn't work. Otherwise, the entire production, they're going to be in our ear going, put a monkey in a costume. It's like, okay, we're going to get a monkey, put it in a costume, and then they watch it just fling its shit all over the set and go, happy? Wallace, go make us some rubber gremlins that we can control and specifically programmed to do the exact thing we need it to do. And as mentioned, Wallace fucking hated working on the movie. He called it one of the worst experiences of his life, and the only reason he came back to do a sequel is because they told him you can get real weird with it, and that's why you have a bunch of crazy ass gremlins in the second one.
I do love the idea though that while all those gremlins are failing in the background and not moving and stuff, someone just comes back in this. Yeah, but what about the monkey?
If that was a monkey, it'd definitely be moving, but we wouldn't be able to predict what movements it'd be making. These puppets had many limitations. The Gizmo puppets were particularly frustrating because they were smaller and thus broke down more. While Wallace recommended making the Mogwais larger to make their creation and functioning easier for the special effects team, Dante insisted on keeping their size small to enhance the cuteness of the creatures.
A wise decision in retrospect, really.
He does mention here, though, that to satisfy the crew, a scene was included in which the Gremlins hang Gizmo on a wall and throw darts at him. This was included on a list that the crew created, known to them as the horrible things to do to Gizmo list. Because they hated the puppet. I told you they fucking hated working with this thing because it broke down all the time. It was a ball ache to operate. So they said, okay, we're going to hang it on a wall and you throw darts at it for a scene. Will that make you feel better?
If we just torture this creature, it's it reminds me of just the concept of torture in the Koroks in Tears of the Kingdom.
Because they piss you off that much. It doesn't. Oh, I realise this. Other effects require large Mogwai faces and ears to be pushed for close-ups, as the puppets were less capable of conveying emotion. Mm-hmm. So they made some large Mogwai things, but I do know for the second one they made just one giant ass Gizmo.
Mm-hmm.
And the new Mogwai, which popped out of Gizmo's body as small furry balls, which then started to grow, were balloons expanded as such. Wallace had also created the exploding gremlin in the microwave by the means of a balloon that was allowed to burst. And that's one of the most fun scenes in the movie, where you can clearly tell the actor being attacked by the gremlin has a gremlin puppet on his hand and he's going, oh no, it's going and then they just throw it into a microwave and it detonates. He'd be like me grabbing Snoop, channel, I go, oh no, he's going to get me, Lucas! It's so obvious when you know that that's how the effect is achieved, but it's fucking hilarious because you just have to think, that actor's having so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
You know that actor's having a great day, right? When it's okay, what do I do today? Okay, put this giant rubber gremlin on your hand, go. Please don't put Snoot in the microwave though, Karl. I wouldn't do that. I would never do that to Snoot. He's too cute. He's like Gizmo. I won't throw darts at him either because I feel mean. Howie Mandel provided the voice of Gizmo, and prolific voice actor Frank Welker, aka Megatron, provided the voice for Stripe. It was Welker who suggested that Mandel perform in Gremlins. So you know what? Shout outs to Frank Welker getting someone else work. Because he could have probably done it himself.
I mean, yeah.
He could have done the entire movie on his own, in terms of like the voice as for the Gremlins and for Stripe and for Gizmo.
I mean, is that not just true for like every single project that Frank Welker's voicing in? It's like Frank could have done the whole movie.
There's a great quote from someone who knows him, and they say, like, "I'll go watch movies with like tigers and shit in, and I'll go, I bet that's a real tiger," and they'll look it up and go, "It's fucking Frank." He can just do tiger roars better than tigers can, because he can roar on command, and you can't really get a tiger to roar on command.
Great. Yeah, that was good.
He mentions that the majority of all the Gremlins voice actors were performed by Michael Winslow and Peter Cullen, with the remaining voices being done by people that they got in.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet that'd be so fun. And I've always said that if I ever manage to, like, you know, stretch out and be a voice actor, I would just want to do like monster voices. I would not want to be anime man. I don't want to be a hero man. I don't want to be like, you know, the main character of anything. I just want to be just like is it D. Bradley Baker? Just making like the weird growly noises into a micro. I'd want to do that.
Oh god, yeah. Just like being all the locusts, like get them.
Like the Theron guards, it's like punish hostiles. Oh, my favourite is I would love to be the voice of Nemesis, because he's only got one line. Just stars. I could do that. Hire me. You know what? I'll re-rate my offer. Anyone out there, if you're working on a project, so you need a voice, I'll do that. Contact us on our Discord or something below. I'll do it for free.
I mean, I'd happily do little voice cameos for projects as well, yeah.
100%. But I'm not going to do like an actual proper voice, because I'm not a voice actor. No one wants to hear this. I say as people are watching right now. You don't want to hear it coming out of a character that doesn't look like me. I'll put it that way. But you might want to hear it coming out of a monster.
I just love when the wind says hostiles in Gears of War.
It's so good, right? Just when's the last time you heard the wind say hostiles? It's like, okay, that's a fair point, Dom. I've never heard the wind say hostiles. And it just continues, like, you know, merchandising with its commercial themes, particularly the cuteness of the character Gizmo. Gremlins became the centre of a considerable merchandising effort. Due to this, it became part of a rising trend in film, which received a boost from Spielberg's own E.T. the Extraterrestrial. And here's the thing: did you ever think that Furby was related to like Gremlins?
Oh, I 100% assumed that the reason that Furbies were made was because of Gizmo.
Yeah, like Furbies feel like we've got Gizmo at home.
Yeah, like we've got just this strange, terrifying alternate universe version of Gizmo at home.
Do you know what? Since we're talking about Christmas, I heard told like the story of like when my brother got a Furby, and he didn't like it because he wouldn't shut the fuck up. So what he did is he just put it upside down upstairs, and like my dad's like, "Where's that Furby we got you for Christmas?" And they went looking for it, and you could just hear like, "Help me, it's dark." They found it upside down, it wouldn't shut up, so my dad had to perform surgery on it. So he took all its fur off. And I remember my mum crying, because like when he had to take its eyelids off, and he kept saying, "I'm scared, it's dark." And if people don't know, Furbies couldn't react to any outside stimulus whatsoever. They're actually fascinating in the way they were programmed, because people insist that they could learn. Like, it's a potential for another Wiki Weekends episode. But the
100%.
basic way they worked is they were pre-programmed after a certain amount of time after being turned on to learn more and more human words. And the first human word they will learn is hello. Because they figured that 99% of people who owned one would try and teach it to say hello.
I thought you were about to say the first word was help.
No, and then it would say stuff like...
It started gaining consciousness as like help.
And it had like a basic sensor which would let it know if there was like light or dark. So it could say things like, "It's dark." And that's about it.
What's a Furby?
But people insist that they could listen, they could learn, to the point where the government banned people from bringing them in. Because like parents were bringing their kids' Furbies into work because the kids were like, "No, take my Furby to work with you, it's scared." And they're like, "No, it's going to spy on them."
Yeah, and didn't we record a Fire Theme video about, like, Furby spies at some
We
point?
did indeed, yes, and we'll record a Wiki Weekends episode about it too if people bug us in the comment.
Why would someone build that?
But you know what, Lucas? There's plenty of merchandise been going on here. There's a video game about Gremlins. There's been a bunch of like board games. There's card games. There's sequels. There's a proposed prequel. But the real thing that is worth mentioning is the legacy. And it mentions that simply it's become a Christmas classic. Although it's not in the same vein as other traditional Christmas movies, it is nonetheless considered to be a Christmas movie.
Yeah. Does it say like who the movie was produced by? Did you say it was Universal?
I'll double check. I believe it's Warner Bros.
Is it Warner Bros?
Yeah, it's Warner Bros. Entertainment, but Universal is still on their lot. Because Warner Bros, as they owned it, they put it into multiverses. Like Gizmo is in multiverses, remember?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that fucking game. You know what, Lucas? That's a Wiki Weekends episode as well. There's also, in the second film, they reference the Warner Bros. Logo and they put Batman logo in it for some reason. Like they have the bat gremlin that turns into Batman for a little bit. Either way, that's Gremlins, one of my favourite Christmas movies. Thank you to our audience on Patreon who voted for this one. If you would like to influence the votes next month, you can check out the Patreon link below or our Discord to continue this conversation with myself and Lucas. We're also be there. Not over Christmas, we've got lives, but we'll be there.
Every now and then. Yeah. Just mogwaiing away in the background.
Just my dad doing surgery on a Furby. Surgery. Let's go. Cheers, everybody. So for everyone at home who's still watching, we have one last thing to say, don't we, Lucas?
We do indeed, and that's just a special thanks to those on our shout-out tier over on our Patreon.
And it's lonely at the top this month because there's one person we need to shout out, and that person is B of Awesome. Cheers to you.
Indeed, and if you would like to join them over on our Patreon, you can find the links in the description below.
Otherwise, go out there and have the day that you deserve, and from myself and Lucas, Merry Christmas.